I understand what it's like to be a student and to have to read. It's almost like your job. I think that kids sometimes forget how fun it can be to read. Hi to all my Korean readers. It's Jeff Kinney, author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. Oh, I'm so glad to be back in Korea. The last time I was here was 8 years ago, and it was a really special visit. We got to go to Changdeokgung Palace, which was awesome, and we had a really funny experience there because I thought that I was going to be doing like a private tour, walking around with a few grown-ups, but apparently my publisher put it on the radio, an open invitation, so hundreds of kids showed up, and they followed me around as I walked around the palace. It was really an extraordinary memory. I wanted to create a series about a kid who was like myself. So as a kid, I wasn't very heroic. I wasn't an aspirational character. I was an average kid, but lots of funny things happened to me. And I really wanted to capture that and to reflect my own life in a book series. Greg Heffley is an average boy. He's a little bit messy. He makes mistakes. He's an imperfect protagonist. And I compared Greg to Harry Potter. Harry Potter is an aspirational character. He's heroic, he's brave, he's magical, he's powerful. And Greg is really the opposite of that character. A kid that other kids could relate to. And I hope that kids can see themselves. I hope that the books will serve as a mirror to their own lives. I have a new book out. It's called Hot Mess, and it's what happens when you mix family and vacation and heat and food together. It's a recipe for disaster. I think that any kid who's ever been on a vacation with their extended family knows what it's like to be in too small of a space with too many people, and that's what this book's about. It's always difficult for me to create something out of nothing. There's nothing more intimidating than a blank page. The first 5 books in the series came from my own life experiences. I took the things that happened to me as a kid and I put them in the fiction blender and stirred them up. So even though they're not exactly accurate, they came from my childhood. These days I use my imagination a lot more and the things that are happening around me right now. Throughout my travels here, I've actually been typing away and coming up with jokes. It's hard work and it takes a lot of time, but I know if I put in the work, I can come up with enough jokes for the next book. I remember it being very overwhelming when I was at Changdeokgung Palace. There was one kid who was there that also came, who was in Jeju Island. So it was strange to see somebody 8 years apart in 2 different places, in Seoul and then in Jeju Island. And I got to see him grown up. I don't get to have those experiences very often where I see a kid twice at different stages in their life. What was really special to me is I got to spend time eating lunch with that kid and some other kids who had grown up on my books, kids who were 17 and 18 years old. And I got to share with them what it's like to be an author. So I don't often get those types of experiences either, where I get to really spend special time with kids. I've had the privilege of visiting many of the countries where my books are published. And what I've learned is that the reason that the books resonate with kids is because we all do share a common childhood. Even though we have cultural differences between us, of course we do. The basics are the same. We have families, we have homework, we have school, we have bullies, we have best friends. This is the fabric of all of our childhoods. And so I've learned a lot about other cultures through my books, but what I've also learned is that we're all really the same. One time I was in China and a girl took to the stage and she gave a really extraordinary speech where she mentioned that in one of my books, Greg says that he might dig a hole through the earth and visit China. She said she thought of Greg as being connected to her, like that he was going to come through the world. It made a difference in her childhood because she felt like she had a friend in my books. And that was a very special experience for me, and it was very meaningful for me to hear that. It's been a real pleasure doing this interview with Yes24. Thank you for all the interesting questions. I wanted to take a moment to encourage every kid to read as much as possible, because the more you read, the more fulfilling your life will be, the more interesting you'll be as a person. I understand what it's like to be a student and to have to read. It's almost like your job. I think that kids sometimes forget how fun it can be to read. So I think it's really important for kids and their parents to remember that it's important to read for pleasure. pleasure. Because when you read for pleasure, then you'll keep reading throughout the rest of your life. I hope they'll remember what it was like to read a book that really set their imagination on fire. Thank you, Yes24.